All right, boys, we ready to rock and roll for our first live, not live, but our first live-ish video version of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast.
Sure.
Let's do it.
All right, cool deal. In 3, 2.
The following is a production of Shark Flight Media.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world. In 3, 2, 1, mark.
Do you know what the secret of life is? One thing. Just one thing.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast.
Hey, kids, how's it going? Welcome to the latest video edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone, joined, as you can see, by my usual partners in crime, the Professor Rob Howe, Kevin Steverson. We're going to get to those guys here in just a second. First, we got to pay some bills, though. Thanks, as always, to our presenting sponsor. That's Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. It's military, sci-fi, fantasy, urban fantasy, high fantasy, space opera, paranormal romance. They've got it all. Just log on to chriskennedypublishing.com. Read about all their books or series or authors. Even sign up for their mailing list. Get yourself a free ebook while you're at it. Again, it is all at chriskennedypublishing.com. They are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy. Thanks, as always, to our friends at the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. They are the sponsors of our Podmail segment, which is where we hear from you, the listeners, later on in the show. So stick around. Got some news from the I Ask for folks, too. It's about every month now. They got free book giveaways and stuff going on. So we'll tell you about that a little bit more later on. And then finally, thanks to our friends over at the Believe Podcast Network. They are the #1 source for podcasting professionals on the net. To learn more about them, go to believe.com. That's BLEAV.com. Well, fellas, here we are. We are doing the video thing. This was kind of born out of necessity. The last time I recorded with David Scott to do Kenobi, our normal platform that we use and have used for years, took a dump on us. And one of my guys sounded like a freaking chipmunk. And I have no idea why, but nobody could figure it out. So we're like, screw it. We're going to Zoom because everybody knows how to use that platform. So that seemed to go off fairly well. And it just kind of became a matter of how do we get the audio going and all the stuff that kind of makes this show the show. So I think we've got some loose solutions for that, but just bear with us, folks. There will undoubtedly be bugs tonight. We're trying new things, but we hope you like it. So anyway, that's pretty well my housekeeping, and yeah, so on and so forth. So fellas, how are we doing this evening? Did you guys have a good 4th of July? Rob, I'll start with you, man. How'd your weekend go?
It went great. I got a chance to take the wife, formerly known as Sweetie, out to see the for reals now stepdaughter,
Nice.
and have dinner, and went to Brahms afterward. And you know, it's really fun when you driving on the interstate, coming back from anywhere on 4th of July. You really get a great fireworks show because it's like an hour long of just driving past people, shooting off stuff, 2 hours sometimes. It blasts. So yeah, we had a great time, and I'm excited to do it here, seeing your guys' face. Although, you know, there's Kevin there switching hats, so he's repping his Georgia Bulldogs right before we came on.
Oh yeah,
I saw that. It's nice and
well, yeah, I mean, they
there.
spend enough money on players. He should wear that. You know,
That's fair.
Go out and buy yourself another national championship, sir. Go right ahead.
Hey, you need to buy more Florida State stuff because y'all ain't got the money to spend on players.
That is very, very true, sir. And that is the problem with college football in 2022. But that is another discussion for another day. How was your 4th, man?
It was good. I'm a charcoal guy, always have been. But the in-laws gave me a electric smoker.
Oh,
so I had to christen it with 2 racks of ribs.
Welcome. How did it go?
About 5 hours worth, total. You got an hour, you wrap them, and the whole deal. But yeah, they were primo. I got my own rub that I put together, and they were outstanding. So
I got to get I got to get a little tutoring with you on ribs, man. Like I've got a couple of recipes that I use, and they're good. But particularly if I just want a straight up dry rub smoked rib, no sauce, no nothing, I have much to learn there. I am still but a Padawan learner. So one of these days we'll get you back over to Bay County and you can teach me because that's what I use, an electric smoker.
Yeah, beef or pork ribs? Beef or pork ribs, Kevin?
These were pork. I do like the beef country style, and I'll do those too sometimes.
Yeah.
But I wanted to test it with the pork ribs, and you know, you had to be careful when you picked them up off the plate and grab both sides. You grab one side, the bone slid out. You know, problems that I have.
Yeah.
So.
That sounds horrible. Well, we did on the topic of smoking and electric smokers. We actually did the same thing on Monday. Had a bunch of friends over to the house. For Nick Steverson, actually, and his family, fellow author with CKP, was
nice.
Came
My
on
boy.
down and hopped in the pool and did all that. So yeah, we had a good time. Smoked about a 10-pound Boston butt and 4 whole chickens.
Wow,
So
nice.
yeah, it was good, man. Now Boston butt, I've about got to where I got my system. I don't really play around with that. With the chickens, I got this Cajun thing I like to do, man. Like I will take a whole chicken, I'll rub it down with olive oil and like a Tony Chicheras. I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. Yvonne, feel free to correct me in the comments.
She will.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway,
Satchery. Don't they call it Tony Satchery?
Satchery?
Something like that.
That sounds about right. But yeah, rub it down with a Tony Satchery, and then I stuff them with sliced green pepper, onion, and celery and garlic.
Nice.
And then I smoke them that way. So you get that nice little kind of Cajun peppery bite on the skin and a bit into the meat. And then all that aroma when you pull it out of the smoker, particularly from the celery and the onion, is just spot on, man. Love it.
Nice.
Yeah, we did chickens, did pulled pork. We did pit beans that I actually experimented using a little bit of deer meat in. And then all the usual sides. You know, we had potato salad. My wife makes the world's best coleslaw, so she did that. And that was it, man. We sat around the bulk of the afternoon just shooting the breeze and drinking cold beer, and it was a really, really nice afternoon.
So you had about a third of my grandchildren there.
Yeah, we had 2. We had Violet and Ace, and Violet brought.
Oh, just 2 of them. Okay, the other 2 boys weren't there.
No, they were off doing other stuff.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
But it was nice. You know, Nick and I got a chance to kind of catch up and rap a little bit about current projects and current events and all the stuff that writers do when you put us knuckleheads together. And then broke off from that into a whole bunch of music talk and Panama City talk, because he's from down here in the area. And it's just a sweet time, man. It was everything you think of when you think of just the quintessential all-American family holiday, man. It was good food, good friends, beautiful weather. Just couldn't ask for much better. So, well, lots of stuff happening. Speaking of writers and writerly things, what say we go ahead and kick off into the news?
And now the news.
And the news is the segment where we just kind of take a brief moment to update readers and listeners on what's going on in our world as writers. Sometimes we're out on the road for conventions, new projects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, Kev, I'll give you a lead on this one, man. What's happening in the world of Steverson?
I'm working on my 3rd fantasy book. Trying to knock that out before the end of the month. I do have to take a break next weekend. I'll be at Tupelo Con. So looking forward to that. That's coming up. It's a pop culture con, so it's not necessarily just writers. So there'll be a little everything there. So if you guys in that area, North Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, that area, y'all come on over.
Cool. So. Rob, how about you, man?
Well, I spent a lot of this week working on edits for Embers and Ash, which is the next Eldros Legacy book. We're going to talk about The Forgotten King, which is coming out next Tuesday, but the one after that, which comes out in August, is the one I've been working on. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're recording this on Thursday, July 7th, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, this day. This is, after all, the birthday of Robert Heinlein. And, we all of us writers here and so much of CKP owes a debt to Mr. Heinlein. And so for me, it's a little bit more personal. My dad was a huge Heinlein fan. And I still remember him giving me the juveniles when I was, 10, something like that. Yeah. And getting me into those. I'd already developed a love of reading, but that was one that he and I got into quite a bit. So the way we connected.
Cool. Well, not much happening in my world. Had a blast, as we always do at LibertyCon this year. So thanks to Brandy and Richard and all the guys all the staff who make that con what it is. Chattanooga was great. Ate way too much at City Cafe with the gang, and had some great panels. For folks who didn't get a chance to catch it, I would certainly invite you to go visit the CKP YouTube channel, which is large and in charge nowadays, man. Jeremy and the crew over there are putting out some great content. But we did a kind of an after action report with CKP and all of the folks who were there as just an hour kind of loosey goosey conversation on the YouTube channel. And just great times were had by all, man, from the salvage panel to the 4HU panel. There were even sightings from the Howell wedding via live stream because he was not there in person, but was certainly there in spirit, and was a great time. So anyway, thanks to everybody who came out to LibertyCon and said hi and bought books, and we loved hanging out with you guys. Looking forward, I got some stuff here on the local horizon. One of the things that I really wanted to try and do in my author platform, to use a nice buzzy term, in 2022 was really identify the opportunities here on the local level to kind of grow my audience and grow my brand. With gas prices at freaking anywhere from $4 to $5 a gallon, depending on what part of the country you live in. Traveling to a whole lot of cons is a lot more expensive than it used to be, and that's always an expensive proposition anyway. Particularly if you start traveling out of state. So finding those little local opportunities where readers hang out in your backyard, I think is super important. And huge thanks to the people over at the Bay County Public Library for really trying to meet readers where they are down here. They've got a ton of events happening. They just opened a big digital media lab that people can go in, sit down. They've got a Rodecaster Pro. They've got all the gear. It's a fully soundproof studio. Like, it is a legit recording studio that is completely open to the public for free. You just call them up and book something on the calendar, and you can go use it. But anyway, I say all that to say they've graciously invited me to come be a part of a podcasting panel that they're going to be having coming up in a month or two. So awesome. I'll be doing that. And then we've also got a local author event that's going to be taking place down here, sadly on the weekend of FactoryCon. So I won't be at FactoryCon, but we've got, I think last count, 22 local authors from here in the Florida Panhandle that are going to be coming out to talk about craft stuff, story stuff, author marketing, podcasting, like pretty much everything about the craft and the biz. We're just all going to talk about it for an afternoon and set up author tables and sell books and the whole spiel. So anyway, those are kind of a couple of the things that are on my calendar moving forward.
So I do have a question about LibertyCon.
Yeah.
Were both of you in the singing to Brandy part?
Sure, we were.
Opening ceremony.
That was the entire CKP choir, man. Like we represented.
Oh, that was awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That totally happened. We were all about that. Good times. She was floored too. She had no idea that was coming. So, and as Chris would note, that idea was born right here on the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast, you'll recall. So, hey, props to us, baby. Yeah. We're living the dream.
Go us.
That's right. That's right. It was all our damn fault. All right. Well, we're here to talk about a topic tonight, guys. Normally we have guest interviews and stuff like that, but occasionally we like to take a break from that and just kind of spend our time as authors talking about the craft that we love so much. And tonight's topic comes courtesy of Rob, which I thought was a brilliant topic when he posted it. And that is this whole notion of writing standalone stories, be they a standalone novel, a short story, a novella, versus writing a series of books. All right. And how each form, each style comes with its own challenges and its own benefits on a lot of levels. So that's kind of what we're here to talk about tonight. So authorly people, buckle up. We hope you enjoy the conversation, take some tips. As always, if we can be of help to you, don't hesitate to track us down on social media and the CKP, the Factory Floor group on Twitter, wherever we're at. You can find us, ask us questions. We'll answer you back. Email us if you want, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. We take questions there as well. So we'll start this out with kind of the simplest question, man. And that is, of the two styles, when you start talking about short stories or standalone stories versus series, which do you find to be the easier way to go? Rob, I'll start with you on that.
Well, this one's easy for me to answer.
Okay.
Whenever I'm playing one of those role-playing games or whatever game I'm playing and they have side quests, I do every one of them. I go off and chase down every single thing I can find. I look for every scrap of treasure. I do all of that stuff. I never find the end to those.
Gotcha.
And that's sort of how my writing goes, because I stick a lot of that stuff in there. Every time I write a story, I'm like, well, there's a side quest here, or this would be a great story here, or what about this thing here? So writing a standalone story is really tough for me because I'm always looking at every story I write and going, well, what about this aspect of it? There's so much fun there. So it's far easier to write a series because I there's always something for me to hook onto from the previous stuff and move forward.
All right, Kev, how about you, man? Do you got a preference on these writing standalones versus series? Do you find one noticeably easier than the other, or one noticeably more challenging?
Know that I find either one more challenging than the other. I mean, they're completely different beasts. A short story, you don't have time to spend the first chapter setting everything up. You just really can't. You also have to limit, your main characters and then that kind of thing. You can't have a lot of different characters, a lot of viewpoints, I should say. Since 2018, I've had published 27 short stories, and I want to say 10 novels now. So either or is you know what I mean? It's just long as you understand that with a short story, you can't go everywhere. Otherwise, you're going to have to cut off, the first 3,000 or 4,000 words and save them for something later.
Right.
But at the same time, that's how you develop a whole world or a whole new series, because this short story, and I had some other stuff I wanted to say, and next thing you know, you're working on a trilogy. So
yeah, that's funny how that works, and we'll get into those little eureka moments here in a little while. I mean, I don't know that one is easier than the other or more challenging. I think they're both kind of a different entity. I can tell you that really rarely does it happen when I write something, and when I write the end on it, I'm done. Like, I'm good with it. I don't want to mess with it anymore. It's exactly what it needs to be, and I'm happy with that. Typically, I'm like Rob. I want to go play a little bit more, and and just kind of pull the strings and see where the rabbit holes take me. That said, it does happen. I can tell you that whenever I finished my short story for From the Ashes, which was my foray into Fallen World, and I kind of finished the story of Ethan Garrett, I could tell other stories with him if I wanted, but that story I felt was done. What I wanted to convey to the reader, from introducing them to the characters, my slice of the world, the settings in Fallen World that had not been explored before, telling the story that is Ethan Garrett and the Coward of Leon County. By the time I got to that, and you have the final scene of that story, there's really no need to go beyond that. I could, but I like it just the way that it is. And I'm hesitant to pull that string any further, because, to use a movie example, I look at something like The Matrix. All right. The original Matrix in 1999 was an incredible film. It was revolutionary on a lot of levels. It's very clear that was never meant to go beyond one film in terms of a story, but it made a crap load of money. And so they went back to the well and told more stories, and every one of them sucked. When I got to the end of Coward of Leon County, that was kind of my feeling that, this is the conclusion of this story. I could tell a different story in this world and maybe weave in these characters, but this one's done. Contrast that with Family Tradition, which is what started the whole Swamp Eagle security thing over in the 4HU. Clearly, I left that one wide open. Is he going to take the deal and reopen the mercenary company, or is he not? Is he going to stay slinging drinks and 10 in bar for peanuts in Jacksonville Starport? That one was one that I clearly had intentions of moving forward with, and that was the aim whenever I sat down to write it. I planned that. So having said that, that actually segues us nicely into kind of the next question that I want to ask, and that has to do with pantsing and plotting. Kev, I'll start with you on this one, because I know you're a pantser, man. Like, you don't plan much of anything. You just sit down and write it. So how does this whole idea of standalones versus series play out when you're that wide open?
Like I said, you're right. I do sit down and I just write, and they talk to me and I write what they say. I don't do a lot of, he would say this, then she would say that, and that means he would say, I don't do that. They just say it, which probably means I'm a little bit insane, but I just write what I'm hearing.
More than a little,
I think all writers are a touch different. So, if about 3/4 of the way through a first book or a novel would let me know if the story continues. And from there, not necessarily shaping and plotting ahead, but I can finish a story in a way where it ends, whether or not, it would continue.
Have you hit a moment yet, though, when you wrote an end, whether it was to a book or a trilogy, and you said, that one's put to bed? Like, we've talked to Kevin Eikenberry, who's a friend of his show. A lot of people are looking forward to, I believe it's Misfit is the one that, or is it, what's the final Jessica Francis book? Right. That's the culmination of a whole lot of stories, but we've had conversations at the bar about what that story is and what it's going to do and how it's going to end. And he's really excited for that to be the end of that story. And there may be more coming down the line with other characters and stuff. It's not the end of her, the Peacemakers and all that, but of the story that he's told now for like 9 books, that's the conclusion. And he's ready to rest in that. How about you? Have you hit that moment with one of your stories or one of your characters when you wrote the end and you're like, you know what? That's the end. It's time to put this one to bed. I'm really satisfied with the way that closes out.
I don't know that I've done that, because Salvage, when I originally started Salvage, I knew I wanted it to be wide open and just story after story could occur. Right. But you can do that when you have the entire galaxy to play with and thousands of races. So that can't end.
Sure.
I wrote the trilogy, a Peacemaker trilogy with Kevin, so I don't know if we'll continue with those characters, but he may wrap the whole thing up with Jessica anyway, and that may happen.
Right.
But there's room on all the ones I've written. Obviously with my fantasy, when I write this third book, it's not going to end there.
Gotcha.
So
good.
I haven't had a chance to hit that yet. I haven't hit that.
All right.
So.
Rob, how about you, man? You are not a hardcore pantser like Kevin is, but you're also
I'm pretty close to a hardcore pantser. I'm shifting a little bit away from it because I'm trying to strengthen certain weaknesses that I've come across. But generally speaking, I'm a hardcore pantser.
Okay, well then, same question, man. How does this affect you as a pantser?
Well, for me, starting everything for me are characters, and so every time I come up with a character, I try to get some idea, a little bit more depth to the character. And this is true even of my most minor characters, the ones that show up and get killed in 5 seconds, right? I try to put something into them. I try to do 2 or 3 different things to add a little depth, even if that never shows up in the writing. It just that's how I create characters to begin with. Along the way, also, I tend to like deep worlds. One of the things I loved about Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, and I've said this before, is that by putting in all those ruins everywhere, by putting in all those touches of things long gone,
right,
he added a depth to that world. And I try to do that. And whether I do that through the way I have people curse, or my own ruins within the world, or some other remnant or something like that. So I'm constantly sticking those in for flavor text, for example, if I'm describing a building or something like that. So I never know when I'm going to use them, and I may never use them, but I'll oftentimes put them there just because it's sort of a habit, because that's the kind of characters and the kind of worlds I like to build. So that when I'm coming back to that setting, I'm very specifically looking for, okay, so I need to do this. Do I have any characters or any places that I've been to that fit this?
Right.
Will that work? And so by bringing that connection in, I'm helping myself, because 1, I've got this character already kind of formed, and 2, as a reader, I like when I see connections happen. Like if I see in book 3 something that's referred to in book 1 of a series, and I can remember that connection, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember how that, and for whatever reason, that makes me feel better about the story. I'm enjoying the process better. So as a writer, I do that for myself because that's how I like to read. As to the second part of your question, have I ever written the end and meant to? Yes. But I will say that the only way I've done that is quite literally I killed the 3 main characters, or the incident in question is a standalone that has to end there. It really was one thing. This came in the military history trilogy that I wrote in for James Young. 2 of those stories are separate. Now, I will say that the world's the same, but those stories are completely separate. They have nothing to do with each other, other than the fact that the precipitating event leads to both. Right. That's also true of the events that I wrote about in Jamie Ibsen's We Dare story. Those 2 stories are completely separate. They may or may not ever get written about again, but that world still exists. And then also in the military history, I wrote one that was very specifically about a single battle in Old English history, and that one has an ending. And once that was over, then that story's told.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that actually brings me to my next question for you guys. And Rob, I'll give you a lead on this. Give me an example of one story that you wrote, whether it was a short or whether it was a novel, that when you put the end on it, you were exceptionally proud of the way that ended, whether it was because you planned it that way, or whether it was because just serendipitously it changed through the writing process. And by the time you put the last period on it, you were just really proud of the way it closed down shop.
I will go with Here Must We Hold which is the old the Anglo-Saxon Battle of Malden in 991 that I retold. And in that battle in real life, the English lose the battle. I wrote it in such a way that the English win it. I have reasons to prefer the English winning it there personally against the various different Viking raiders at that particular battle. It's an interesting battle because of the tactics that went into it, and also the poem. There was a poem written about that battle that we still have, and it's a glorious poem. It's filled with all sorts of the traditional Germanic oath ideal of dying to save your lord, or now that your lord's dead. Well, he's dead, but I swore my life that I would die with him. So it's got all of these heroic ideals that I just love. And so I got to write that poem. I got to come up with a great way that the English won while still preserving all of the actual facts that we know of the battle, while still preserving all of the terrain, while changing nothing other than one thing, and that's whether or not a certain person ran away. And if that certain person doesn't run away, then maybe the rout doesn't happen, in which case maybe they actually win. And that's where I went with it. And I wasn't sure I could pull it off in a believable sense. I really struggled to pull it off, to make sure that that particular sequence worked. The Vikings do outnumber the English at that battle. The Vikings do have better weapons, but the English do have some advantages as well. And the thing that ended that battle, I think, was this rout. And by figuring out a way to make that not happen, made that work. And at the end, I was like, yeah. So I would go with Here Must We Hold, which is in Trouble in the Wind.
Okay. Kev, how about you, man? Is there a specific instance or time when you put the final period on something? And again, that was it. That was the final bow on the present. And you said, it's finished. I like where that's in. I'm not going to touch that anymore. Was there one instance of something that you wrote that you said, I'm really proud of that?
Yeah, I think I wrote a short story for the first We Dare book called Taming the Beast, and it takes place in the Salvage universe and it involves Gunny. And I really like the way that story ended, the way it came to me. So cool. I'm really proud of that. I just finished something and it's been announced. I've got a novella coming out. It's under Shadow Alley Press, but there are 5 novellas going to come out at once. Myself, Kevin J. Anderson, Kevin McLaughlin, Bill Webb. So it's I can't go in details on the story. It hasn't been announced. Right. I really like that novella that I wrote. It's 20,000 words. So, cool. But I think Taming the Beast, and that's one of the stories you can get for free when you join my newsletter. Nice. But I really like the way that one came up. So,
yeah. Side tip for the listeners, man. If you guys don't sign up for our mailing lists, you really should do that, man. Kevin, me, Rob, I'm fairly sure a number of other CKP authors, in addition to getting news and information from us on what's going on in our world, we also send you information about free books and book giveaways. So if you're tightening the belt right now, that's a great way to be. And I would encourage you to sign up for that and sign up for the CKP newsletter, because just about every week, Chris has got something going on in the way of a budget book, a buck book, as we call them, something to that effect. And let's be honest, I mean, if you're leaving it all up to the Facebook algorithm to tell you what's happening in the world, it's a good bet you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And with email, you're always going to get it. You're going to get that every month or every 2 weeks, depending on how often you want to send it out, weekly in Chris's case.
And in mine.
Yeah, can't stress that enough, guys. If you're looking for good book deals and stuff, go the email route. It is definitely a good one for you. All right, well, let's get back into this notion of when things blow up on us. I can't think of very many times when I sat down to craft a story. Again, aside from maybe the Fallen World story, when it didn't blow open into something else. All right, my first book I ever wrote, Mako. That was it. I wrote one story. I'm like, hey, I'm going to write this story as a creative outlet. I got these quirky little characters, this fun little, weird world where we're going to fly around and fly starfighters based off a video game and yada, 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 yada. And by the time I got to the final shot in that, I was really happy with the way the book ended. I love the final scene and just the heart and the emotion that came out in that. But it was very clear there's going to be more to this story. Through the writing process, I hit a point when it's like, okay, they're going to make a choice. They're going to do something here that they are not going to be able to walk away now. Like, they are in this. And if you've read the book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's why I wrote the epilogue that I wrote to that book, because it sets up book 2. I had no idea when I started work on Mako that I was going to get roped into writing a trilogy and then later on a spinoff book in Detroit City Vice. But that's exactly what happened. So, Kevin, I'll start with you on this one, man. What happens when you sit down to write a story and you know pretty early on, okay, one book is just not going to do it? Number one, how do you handle that from a creative standpoint, but also how do you handle that from a workflow standpoint? Because listen, we're all busy guys. We all write in other people's universes. You've got other projects on the docket that you've committed to. So how do you, as the creator of this story, now handle that? And how do you approach that, knowing that I've got a lot of stuff on my plate that I've got to do, but this story requires that? So how do you balance all that?
Well, I mean, I keep a board for those of you with video, and hey, there's my board. Can't see what all's on it. But I keep a board that lets me know what's next and that kind of thing. And I pretty much stick to that, and I have dates and timelines on it. But when I'm writing the first book in a trilogy, and I know it's going to be a trilogy, I'm not necessarily planning what happens in the books, but I do have to plan when I want these to come out, roughly. Yeah. When they need to go to the publisher. And that's how I have to set my schedule. And I've had to turn down offers from other people because, hey, I'm doing my own thing. I've got my own universe, and that has to hold priority. Right. So it just has to. You have to plan ahead like that. You have to plan far enough ahead. As far as writing them, I don't do cliffhangers in books, even though it's first, second, third book of a trilogy. I don't end with a cliffhanger. I do end the story that's in that first book. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity is there to continue on, and the reader knows this, but I didn't leave them hanging and now they're ticked off. They got to wait 4 months, 5 months, 6 months for the next book. I don't do that. Some people do, and that's a different author's preference, but I won't leave a cliffhanger like that. I'll finish the story, but let you know there's more coming.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's dicey, man. You better be promising people that, okay, in 2 months, this is going to be resolved. And that's why we're leaving it this way. Rob, how about you, man? What happens when you encounter that problem where you're writing a story? When I get done with this one, it's going to be off my plate and I'm going to turn it into the publisher, and you get halfway through the draft and you're like, yep, this is a freaking trilogy, but you've got other stuff on the board, other projects, other obligations. How do you balance all that?
Oh, you're still muted, Rob.
Sorry. You have to adjust. I mean, you can't, there's no one right answer, to be honest, because maybe you can turn around and do it when it's fresh, and maybe you can't. It depends on your other obligations, like what Kevin was talking about. For me, the biggest example is the Feeding of Sorrows. Right. My draft, my cat, by the way, is deciding to make an appearance. Don't know why he's in here, by the way. But anyway, the Feeding of Sorrows, I was about 145,000 words into a 100,000 word novel. And I was like, okay, the ending will be right here anywhere. But I have this one other battle. Okay, I have to get to this other battle. And I kept, it's right here. It's right here. And I got to about 155 and I went, this is the second book. Right. And that became The Ravening of Wolves. And now that I finished The Ravening of Wolves, I'm like, well, this really flows better because there is one more battle to win. Right. And so it's going to be a trilogy. I'm going to end it at that trilogy because then the story arc will have worked. Now, you were talking about balancing where you go on trilogies. My philosophy is that the first Star Wars trilogy had it, the one and only Star Wars trilogy had it right. Right. Star Wars was a unit that you could just watch, and the Death Star blows up and you're hunky-dory. You don't have to watch anything else. Great movie. Empire Strikes Back is a stronger movie because it's so darker and the acting's better and the story's better and all sorts of things, but it leaves you with a lot of cliffhangery stuff. But I didn't mind it after that because at that point I'd had a chance to make my decision on whether I was invested in that story or not. Right. So when the second one came out, I didn't mind that there was, I was going to have to wait for the Return of the Jedi. And so the Return of the Jedi comes, and it basically is a little bit of a two movie story there between between Empire and Return. I actually think that's a great way to balance a trilogy out. Gives people a chance to drop away if they didn't really like it without having to feel like that they are screwed out of knowing the story. So that's what I try to do in my in my trilogies and in my series. It doesn't always work. I'm not as good a writer sometimes as what Star Wars was, but that's what I'm aiming for.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm very much in line with Kevin. There are times when I just have to say no to things. And while I might like to go right in this sandbox or that universe, if I'm already committed to a project and I've already told people that I'm going to do it, then that's what I got to do. And I'm going to honor that. And if I get this eureka moment that particularly in my own stuff, that, God, I got this great idea for a sequel to Detention City Vice. Like I got to make this happen. Yeah, hey man, listen, I'm in salvage land right now, and after that I may be in a different universe. I haven't decided that yet. So I really kind of pick and choose how I'm going to handle that, because I mean, listen, we all got day jobs, we all got other obligations. We don't get to just sit around, most of us anyway, just sit around and be authors full time. One instance when I just had to roll with it was obviously when I collaborated with Chris Kennedy. We did Street Survivors. And by the time we got to the end of Street Survivors, it was clear, okay, this is going to be 2 books. This story is going to be 2 books. This transitions perfectly into where they're trying to go with the Guild Wars. And we just got to put the pedal to the metal and roll. And so projects that I had kind of planned on doing at the time, I wasn't thankfully locked into ironclad, and I was able to pivot and make 3 Steps to Oblivion my next book, and away we went. So that was an instance when I just kind of had to roll with it. But all right, hang on, guys. You just got to bear with me. I minimized my little thingy here with my questions, bugs and all that. So all right, next question. What happens when readers want a sequel to a book or a story that you kind of figured might be closed already, might be done? How do you approach that? Rob, I'll give you lead on that one.
Well, again, I don't know that there's a hard and fast answer to this. The key thing is you can't make something just because the readers said we want more.
Right.
Like if that's the only thing you're doing it for, you get the Matrix movies that you were talking about earlier.
Or the Star Wars sequel trilogy, when they went to George Lucas and said, is Palpatine really dead? Yes, he's deader than Julius Caesar. Okay, thanks. But we're going to bring him back anyway, because that's what we think is going to sell more tickets. Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe there is a place that you can go, and that's another set of stories. And I give it back to the Star Wars universe. A perfect example are like the Timothy Zahn books that came after it, and all the other stories of what else is happening in that universe. That's a great place that they could have gone, and there are other places that you can go, but maybe that storyline is done. You just have it's one of those things that you got to take it on a case by case basis. But whatever you do, you have to remember you are doing this because the readers want it. And above all, you must respect the readers.
Could not agree with that more. Kev, how about you, man? You ever had an instance when a story was done, a character was done, but there was enough popularity and enough demand from readers to want to revisit? Well, are they really done? Can I do more here? And if so, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think so. I ended up writing 3 different short stories on Orbital Defense Corps, that little group, that unit, because readers want it. But one thing as authors we have to watch, you have to watch out who's loudest. Yeah. If you got 3 people talking about we want this, we want this, we want this, but 2,000 never mentioned it, do they really want it, or is it just one person really loud screaming for it?
Right. That's a great tip. Yeah, that's
so
a great
you
point.
have to, you know what I mean? And then you write it and then it doesn't do what you thought it was going to do because everybody wanted it. No, only 3 people wanted it, and they talk to each other on a regular basis anyway. Yeah. So, it's a fine line.
I'll give you another example of where the authors are struggling to put this out, to follow up on a story that they had thought they put to bed. And that's the Prince Roger series from John Ringo and David Weber. That series ends with Prince Roger becoming emperor. Mm-hmm. And in their minds, they were done with it. Unfortunately, there was enough kinetic energy still left in those stories, and so many questions because the war had just started, that we wanted more. And they never have really gotten a good place in their heads to be able to write to that setup. And honestly, as long as they're honest with, what they're trying to do, if they gave us crap, I would be pissed off. If they gave us nothing, I understand it. And so that's it. You've got to respect the readers, even if you're saying no.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I'm on board with that. Now that we kind of touched upon this earlier, this does not really play into the whole standalone versus a series discussion, but I did think it warranted a mention and for us to spend a little bit of time on it. Writing short stories is really kind of an art in and of itself, man. I mean, particularly, and Rob, you alluded to this. So you've had instances when you set out to write a short story and you knew this is it. Like there will not be more because I know the end of this, everybody's going to die. There's not more to this. I have to make this 7,000 to 10,000 words count. There is an art to that I think a lot of people, even myself, grapple to even come close to mastering. What are your tricks to the trade for, writing a quality, self-contained short story that is compelling, has good characters, has good world, but is, again, 7,000 to 10,000 words and you're out the door?
Which one of us do you want to start?
Rob.
Okay. I will say that first of all, you have to be ruthless with your own writing. Many of the short stories that I've written about 3,000 or 4,000 words out of that 7 to 10. So I've written about half of it and gone, oh crap, these last 500 words or 300 words are all that need to be in the story. And that I can cut the other 3,500 or 3,000 words or whatever and push them to the side. I may have had to write them so that I could write a good story, but they can't be in this story because they're wasting space. And the thing about short stories is you can't waste space.
Yeah.
Every word has to be doing its job, especially in even the shorter fiction. I wrote a 1,000 word story for William Just Roberts, and it's a really nice exercise to do something like that because you're literally sweating. How do I phrase this one thing? Do I do it with 3 words or do it with 2? And sometimes the 3 words sound better, but maybe if you're really aiming, you really need to get 3 words off of this so you can go from 1,002 to 999. It's a neat exercise. The other thing I would suggest to people is the 1950s and 60s and 40s are really what I would consider the golden age of short story in science fiction. There are so many brilliant short stories that came out in that time period. Some of the ones that we still consider classics. I don't know exactly when the Intergame came out, but it's early 70s at the latest. Mm-hmm. You get Flowers for Algernon. You get other stories like that. Read these stories and figure out what it is that you think works for it, and see how efficient those guys are with their prose. And so go back, and if you can find them, go find the Astoundings from the 40s, the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Those are consistently fantastic collections of short stories. In particular, pay attention looking for a guy named Randall Garrett. I've talked about him before. He's really good at writing a short story with a twist, and a twist that fits the story and yet locks it into your brain so that you never forget that story. Yep. Brilliant at that. So
Kev, how about you, man? Tips for the trade, writing short stories, compact, tight, but powerful.
Well, for me, the main thing is you can't have too many viewpoints. 1, maybe 2 viewpoints.
Yeah.
A couple main characters, 3 at the absolute most. Now, that's not to mention you can't have some sides and stuff like that, but those sides get 2 sentences. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There's a lot of description. You leave it up to the reader to decide if your guy's tall, short, whatever. You don't go into, you don't write a paragraph about his description. You just let it come. You know what I mean? Yep. And so you just have to be tight with it. But you can't have a lot of viewpoints. You can't have a lot of characters. You just can't. And you got to have a main plot, 1 small side plot. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I love Rob's recommendation about going back and pulling up some of that older stuff from the 50s and 60s. Listen, writing 101, man, read a crap load of really good stuff from the stuff that you want to write. So if you want to write military sci-fi, read Ringo, read Weber, read those guys. Okay. If you want to write really good short stories, go find people that have written really tight short stories, read it, study it, understand what it is that makes that stuff really powerful to you, and then try and integrate that style into your own short stories. And to Kevin's point, pay close attention to that, man. If there's a detail in there about world or, whatever that you can scratch it. It's got to go. So, all right, parting shots as we start to kind of close this down. And Kev, I'll start with you, man. Any tips that you would give to would-be authors or writers who are listening, watching this show about how to handle this. All right. The whole talking, the discussion has been about standalones versus series. Maybe somebody's just getting started. You got any tips for them on how to handle this when it strikes that this is a standalone and I'm done, or nope, this one's going to continue, and how to handle that?
Well, writing is not just writing. As authors, we also have to run a business.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the reality. And series sell books. Series lets you run ads on the first book only, yet you sell all the way through. If you write a standalone, you run ads on that book and that's all you're going to get.
Yeah.
So what's your return on investment? But if you put an ad on the first book of a trilogy, you have the other read through and you're making more money. So as far as a business standpoint, series is where it's at.
Gotcha. Rob, how about you, man? Any parting shots for authors, people who may be looking to get into this business or in it now, who routinely encounter this sort of an issue where they aren't really sure what it is that they want to do?
Two things. One, to follow up on Kevin. He's absolutely right. From a novel perspective, and I think about this and as a publisher, I'm literally telling people who are coming to me, look, I really don't want to publish this until you've got 3 books in hand so that I can publish a trilogy, because I'm not going to make money until I get done with the 3rd book. That's just the reality of what readers want in this genre. Right. The caveat there is that if you get an opportunity to write a short story in an anthology and it's going to be a one-off, that's perfectly acceptable, because those anthologies are basically extra writing credits that you can use. You can always use those short stories for a variety of things once those rights come back to you. You can use them as freebies, you can resell them as singles on Amazon, you can do all sorts of things with them. So you can write standalone short stories all you want. Go for it. The more stories you write, the better you'll be. The last thing, though, I would say about whether or not a story is going to be a standalone or a series, honestly, your characters should tell you when the story is over. They should have the feel. You should have, as you're writing that end, you should have a feel about whether they want to go on to the next thing or not.
Yeah.
And yes, this is a pantser answer, but to be honest, I think, you read stories and you always have a feeling at the end. I talked about Ringo and Weber and the Prince Roger series that had the feel that it was going farther. So your characters will tell you.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said, especially Kevin, and kind of looking at this from more of a business standpoint. You are going to make more money off of a trilogy. That's just the nature of it. When you have more product to sell, you make more money. It's not complicated. All right. It's just basic math. But to Rob's point, I am very much a fan of the story needs to be the story. If it's over, it's over. All right. Don't try and milk it just to get another dime out of it, because I think a lot of times readers will call you out on that big time. And I'll go back to The Matrix. All right. They made a great film, the Wachowskis did, in 1999, and we loved it. They should have never made another one. I still kick myself that I went to go see the last one and paid my freaking money to go see that. I mean, what was I thinking? It was horrible, but that was a cash grab. Don't be that guy. Write your story, write it as best as you can possibly write it, turn it in, and then rest in the fact that you created something you can be proud of. So, all right, fellas. Well, thanks so much for that discussion. Again, listeners, viewers now, I guess I could start calling Podmail viewer mail. I don't know. I think somebody used that once a time. Get that another time. Thanks for taking part in the discussion. And I'm blabbering, which means it's time to go to halftime. Halftime. Come on, Sounder. I have Windows Wheel of Death. We may not get a halftime sounder, folks. And this is when all the Mac people are like, see, if you were just on a Mac, this wouldn't happen.
It wouldn't happen in this particular way, maybe.
No, it wouldn't happen in this particular way. All right. So whatever reason, my media player is not wanting to play the rest of my imaging, but that's okay. We'll kick it on to the halftime. Rob, this is typically where we talk about new releases, man, and that's your job. So what's on the docket for this week in CKP new releases?
This week we have Gods of War by William S. Frisby. This mission was supposed to be his last. After more than 20 years in special operations, USMC Gunnery Sergeant Wolf Matheson wasn't looking forward to retirement when, implanted with an experimental artificial intelligence, he deployed on his last mission with a platoon of Marine Raiders being sent to the Jovian moon Europa. The USS Jefferson was destroyed en route, though, and only Matheson and 3 other Marines survived. Trapped in stasis, they were hurled into the outer reaches of the solar system, where they wouldn't be found for hundreds of years. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United States is destroyed, and a fascist regime rises to power, expanding into the galaxy to plant its boot heel on the necks of humanity. But SOG, the social organizational governance, is not unopposed, and researchers at a top secret research outpost are working on a solution that will let SOG reign supreme. Unfortunately for the Marines, they're awakened from stasis at the same time the researchers awaken a threat that endangers the entire human race. The odds are against them, but that's nothing new for Marine Raiders. Semper Fidelis and Semper Invictus.
All righty, other stuff happening around the world of CKP this week. We've got another new release that will actually be dropping after the release of this episode, and that is in the form of The Forgotten King, which is a brand new Eldros Legacy novel from Mark Stallings. That will be arriving July 12th, so definitely keep an eye out on the interwebs for that. I can tell you personally, I did CKP Confidential earlier this week with Mark and got a reading out of that. Really, really cool stuff, guys. So if you're into the Eldros Legacy fantasy in general, that is definitely one you're going to want to check out. Again, that is The Forgotten King, the latest book in the Eldros Legacy, and that will be arriving this week, July 12th, from Mark W. Stallings. He had to correct me on the pronunciation of his name, by the way. I think I got that right this time.
It's Stallings like stallion.
Like stallions. The stallion. All right, new out in audio this week. Fallen World, people. We got some new listens for you, man. Comes to us in the form of Pacific Shogun by Jamie Ibsen. That is Fallen World Book 11, once again read by the incredibly talented Mark Boyat. Long story short, if you want to know what happened to the city of Seattle after the fall, then this is the story where you're going to get the answer to that. So I've heard good things about that one, and it's Fallen World, people. I mean, like, you really can't go wrong with that. In other CKP news, we mentioned this kind of at the top of the show. Book deals abound, man. CKP lately has been kind of partnering with Wordfire Press, if you will. That's Kevin J. Anderson's shop to cut you guys some breaks on some book deals. And we've had stuff from the Hit World universe coming up down the line. We're going to be looking at some stuff on the cheap from the Salvage Title universe, all kinds of deals. So if you're not familiar with this, it's because you're not signed up for the newsletter, man. Go to chriskennedypublishing.com, sign up for the newsletter, and every week you'll be in the know as to what books you can get for less than $1. I mean, 99 cents. We're all doing that right now, man, and cutting, tightening belts. So get after it there. Finally, last thing I did want to mention, and I mentioned them before, but I'll do it again because they're awesome people and they're working their butts off to be able to bring you guys some good stuff. Be sure you check out the CKP YouTube channel. Jeremy and the gang over there are bringing you live events every week, whether it's book launches and author launches, whether it's author interviews like they had with Marisa and Rob a while back, and just a lot of quality stuff. So if you love the CKP universe and the CKP titles, first and foremost, man, that's going to be your front line for interactive information. And again, all that stuff's live. So go check it out, log into the comments, ask questions. They'll respond to you right there on the show. And make sure you check that out. But that's what's happening again from the world of Chris Kennedy Publishing. They are message-free sci-fi with a slice of fantasy, and you can learn more about them at chriskennedypublishing.com. Going to give this one more shot and see how it goes. Fingers crossed.
You got mail.
All right, that's going to bring us down to our pod mail segment, which is now our viewer mail segment, as it were. It's presented by the folks at the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. Folks, if you don't know who I'm talking about, the I Ask for folks are awesome. I mean, that's just really kind of they wake up in the morning and they piss excellence, to borrow a Talladega line. I don't know if that's what Craig Martell wants me to describe his organization as, but I'm just calling it like I see it, people. They're awesome over there at the IASFA. It doesn't matter what you are. If you're a writer or if you're a reader, they have something for you. Go to their website. It's iasfa.org. Sign up for a free account. As writers, we're all looking for community, man. We're looking for friends. We're looking for colleagues, people we can network with, learn from, bounce ideas off of. The I Ask for folks give that to you, and it's a free account. It doesn't cost you a dime to sign up. So get an account, plug in, start meeting some people and trading some messages. It's good stuff. If you're a reader, again, they got book giveaways going on every month. All right. This month, it's a massive sci-fi short story giveaway that's going to be happening later in July. So go to the website, iasfa.org. All right. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter, and then they will email you every month to say, hey, you want some free books? Well, we've got them right here. So go check them out. But that's the good folks again at the IASFA, the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy authors. Love those folks. They are great people. All right. First question comes to us from Ryan. Well, it's official. Baker Mayfield is now a Carolina Panther. I'd ask who you guys feel got the better end of this trade, but really, why bother? What are your thoughts on Baker heading to the Panthers, and do you think this makes them a better team? Rob, you're the football guy, man. I don't call you the professor for nothing. So weigh in on this. What were your thoughts on Baker? What were your thoughts on the deal and Baker to the Panthers?
Well, I heard the stat. I haven't double checked it, but it feels like it's right. The two current active leaders in interceptions now both play for the Panthers. So I think it's a good gamble by the Panthers when it's conditional fifth. I mean, conditional fifth or fifth round picks usually don't end up providing any significant value. So there's a chance here. You might as well play the card. Whether Baker will do well, I don't know. He's got to be set up to succeed. I'm not entirely sure that I have some questions about the way the Browns handled him. The Browns oftentimes are doing a lot of good things in the draft and then not executing on the field.
Right. The Browns.
So, there's been a lot of players that they've gotten that are good players. I think they've drafted well of late, but the execution hasn't been there. So whatever it is that's hampering that organization, I don't know if that's going to follow him to Carolina. And to be honest, Carolina hasn't done a great job of that sort of thing lately either. And I don't know if they're going to be able to develop anything out of him. He may be what he is now, and that is better than a lot of quarterbacks out there, but I wouldn't, he's not in the top 10 for sure. And top half, maybe, I don't know, right in the middle, probably.
Yep. Kev, how about you, man? You were actually the one who shot me a message and you're like, yo, Baker's going to Carolina. What were your thoughts on this trade?
Well, something in me, something in the back of my mind says he's going to do well there. They're going to play a lot better. Now, I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it's going to be a definite uptick on their win-loss record. And the Browns are going to get even worse. And who knows? Can you imagine 2 years from now they pull the Rams?
Right.
And then it really makes the Browns look like the Browns. Okay.
That's a bit of a reach, but please continue.
So, well, when Kevin's done, I want to add one more thing.
Well, it could happen because it depends on if Carolina keeps going out there and getting people. If they get a decent line, they give them some protection. You just never know. You never know.
They could be getting him a new head coach in a year if things don't turn around drastically. Yeah. Rob, what you want to add, man?
Well, if you're the Cleveland Browns, which would you rather have? An offseason without any of this turmoil where you just said Baker's our quarterback and we're going to stick with Baker, we're going to ride him, and not any of the Deshaun Watson talk, or end up with the quarterback that's likely the thing I'm hearing is it's a year-long suspension. The reason that there hadn't been an announcement yet is the NFL was actually pushing for an indefinite suspension. Right. So not just this year, but maybe into 2023. The Browns have played this about as poorly. Like I say, Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback when he's on the field than Baker Mayfield. But a happy Baker Mayfield with the rest of the talent that's on that team, there's still chances there. Without Deshaun and without Baker, I don't know.
Well, it's like I said, I mentioned the Rams, and Detroit was like, we're getting rid of him. He's out of here. Send him to the Rams. We're good to go. We'll be better. And he went to the Rams and showed how good he really was. And it's like, good job, Detroit.
Yeah, well,
the Rams Baker's not Stafford, and the Panthers are definitely not the Rams.
But he is better than his numbers have been in the Browns because they're the Browns.
I agree with that. My issue with this, and listen, I think Carolina definitely came out smelling like roses on this. Whether Baker's any good or not, I don't know. I mean, listen, he had one nice season with Cleveland and showed out. Crap. Rob, am I off by saying he's probably the best quarterback they've had since Bernie Kosar? I mean, is that a reach? Was there somebody else in there that actually didn't suck for Cleveland before Baker?
That's a reasonable statement, actually. I I had to take a second to remember whether Brian Sipe, who was great for a stretch there,
right,
prior to Kozar, I had to.
I mean, I remember all the busts from Tim Couch to, you name it. God, I remember when Eric Zier played for Cleveland and actually managed to be quasi productive. Remember him from UGA, Kev?
Yeah, is it the quarterbacks are bad coming there, or is it whatever the team's doing, whatever they're
a horrible,
whatever
they're a horrible organization from top to bottom. They have been for years, whether that was Art Modell or whether it's the crew they've got there now that is really the Browns 2.0. But back to Carolina. Listen, I good Lord, you gave up a fifth, maybe a fourth round pick if he plays this year. You're not even paying half of his salary because Cleveland has got to eat the other half. There's no loss here. There's no downside to this. It's all upside. And if he comes in and fulfills even half the promise that you would hope you get out of a first overall pick, then you won the freaking lottery here. My issue with Carolina is, number one, I don't think they're a very well-run organization. I think their owner's really kind of an idiot. I don't know that I believe in Matt Rule. I think he is very quickly working his way toward being another college coach who busted at the professional level. You look at that offense, and I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot there on the offensive line. I don't think it's turnstiles, but I don't think they're elite, and they definitely don't have any wide receivers that are worth a crap.
Robbie Anderson's not bad.
Yeah, but dude, there's a reason why every time Christian McCaffrey goes down, that's their year. And he goes down a lot. Like if you get 14 games out of Christian McCaffrey, you've had a great year. So, I don't know how much Baker's going to have to lean on when and if he cracks the starting lineup. So, but I don't think it cost Carolina anything to try. And that's why I think this was a really great move for them. And kudos to them for just waiting to get him, because everybody knew Cleveland was not going to be able to do anything with him. Like he was going to be out. He made that very, very, very clear. So there was no reason if you wanted him to be like, okay, yeah, we'll give you 2 first rounds and a second round in next year's draft to trade for him. They were going to have to cut him if nobody stepped to the table. And that's why Carolina just waited him out and got the deal that they got. So, kudos to the front office for being able to pull that trigger and play the waiting game and win. So, all right, next question comes to us from Rachel. The kids and I just finished watching Stranger Things season 4, and I'm happy to report that everybody seems relatively satisfied with the ending, and we're excited about season 5, which is going to wrap up the series. What were your thoughts on Stranger Things S4? And also, who is an underrated 80s musician or band that you would like to see get the front row treatment a la Kate Bush in season 4? I'll take the first part of this because I'm kind of the pop culture guy on this show. I actually thoroughly enjoyed Stranger Things season 4, far more than I thought I would. I was really starting to get kind of tired of Stranger Things. It felt like every season was just a retread of the same story. It was slasher, horror 80s, and you love the nostalgia. They absolutely nailed the 1980s on that show. But, just ask Cobra Kai. Nostalgia only takes you so far before you've got to have a story to tell. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. This was the season when I felt like they really connected the dots for us. You found out who was behind the Upside Down. You found out why a lot of that stuff was happening. You finally get the reveal of who the actual big bad is behind all this and what his stake is and how he's tied to all of this. It was really, really well written, really well executed from a directing standpoint. I was really happy that they went ahead and gave us the first, 6 episodes and then dropped the last 2, which were freaking epic. Once they had them finished, they didn't rush them. And I think that served them well. And so now I'm really excited to see kind of where this is going to go in season 5. And, very much in the theme of this episode, I'm happy that the writers have said, this is our end. There may be spinoff stuff that we'll do, but as far as these characters and their story, we are ready to put a bow on this, and we know how it's going to end, and we're not going to waver from that. And I think when you look back at a lot of the shows in history that have stuck by their guns on that, whether it was Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul or, whatever, those were the best shows. Show I always loved was Supernatural. It was arced out to be a 5-year show. And when you watch the finale for season 5, you can see how that was meant to be the finish. That was supposed to be it. That was curtains. And CW milked it for another 10 years, made a crap load of money, and the show was never even remotely as good as it was in those first few years. I'm happy that they're not going to do that with Stranger Things. And so I'm excited about season 5. As far as underrated artists from the 80s that I would love to see spotlighted, I've had Kate Bush stuck in my brain for like 3 days now, running up that hill. And I really don't like the song, which that kind of makes me mad. But there was a really crappy knockoff Journey band that I actually kind of have a soft spot for various reasons, called Honeymoon Suite. They had like maybe 2 hits back in the day, and other than that were completely and utterly forgettable. But they are that type of band that I think would really shine in this type of role. I think put into the right scene with the right context, and you hit the music and it drives the emotion of the scene. I think if done right, that could really work. So my vote on the 80s band is going to be Honeymoon Suite. Kevin, I'll go ahead and throw to you from there, man. I know you have not seen Stranger Things season 4 yet, so I won't put that on you, but 80s musicians, man, that was kind of your era. You got experience there. Give me an underrated hero from that era that you think could shine in a show like Stranger Things.
I don't think they're underrated. I just think they've been, the time has passed. But I think Night Ranger was a great band in the 80s. They had a lot of different tunes. You could just picture them using Sister Christian on a real touching scene, or Don't Tell Me You Love Me, or there's a handful of songs. All right. But I'm a Night Ranger fan, and I think their music would really do well in a series.
Okay. Rob, how about you, man? Any votes for underrated 80s heroes that you think should get the nod in Stranger Things?
Yeah, I don't know that they're as underrated as Honeymoon Suite, but King's X comes to mind.
Oh, Greg X. Voles. I remember that guy.
Gretchen Goes to Nebraska was one of the best albums I've ever listened to, and I remember very distinctly the moment I heard it. So I would go with King's X. The other band I would contemplate that again, people know them, but I don't think they gave them the proper amount of love, and that's the Cults.
Oh, sure. Oh, God, yeah, man. Crank up a little Firewoman. Absolutely.
Yep. I was thinking more American Gothic, or Ashes and Fire, or Ashes and Ghosts, excuse me. Great songs that can probably be worked in, probably more so than the King's X stuff, which is better music, but probably doesn't necessarily fit the Stranger Things mold as much.
Dude, tough to beat Ian Astbury as 80s rock singers go, man. Dude, that guy could flat belt it. And they're still putting out stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so is King's X. To be fair here, that band has been going, both of them, for 40 years now. So.
All right. Okay. Next question comes to us from Ethan. Is it just me, or was the USFL actually a lot of fun to watch? Congratulations to Birmingham on taking home the inaugural title. They were the best team all season, so they certainly deserved it. And there's something to be said, or here's to looking ahead to 2023. What were your thoughts on the USFL now that their season is closed? And do you care that they're coming back next season? Rob, you're the football guy, man. Thoughts on the USFL? Go.
I'll answer it fairly simply. I really wish I could have watched more games. I just didn't have the TV structure set up to watch more games. I enjoyed every game I watched. I think it'll be stronger when we get more crowds in. That's the one thing I thought that they lacked. But the football was good. The presentation on TV was good. Mm-hmm. The way they showed things, the things that they added, the extra mics, I thought that was fun. And, I'm actually wearing my Battlehawks t-shirt because I'm thinking the XFL is going to come back and give us more of that same sort of thing next spring. And I think between the two of them, we're going to be really pleased with spring football starting in 2023. And I think this time, with the money that's behind it and the opportunities to watch being in so many different places, I think both spring leagues have a chance to work. And I just hope I can watch more next year.
I don't know if there's room for 2 spring leagues. I'm going to waver on the odds of that, or probably no. We'll see. Kev, how about you, man? USFL year 1, looking ahead to year 2. Any thoughts?
I loved it. Part of the reason is I picked Birmingham as my team. It's the closest team to me, so therefore they were my team, and they won it all.
Yep.
So that's Braves, Birmingham, and my Bulldogs, so that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. I don't know that they'll do it again next year, but they got the advantage of they had all the fans, and it was all the fans. next year they'll have all the fans again. So that was kind of an unfair home field advantage. Let's be honest. It really was, because everybody was cheering for them.
I understood. And I think in fairness to the USFL, you have to look back at why they made the decision to do what they did with playing all of their games in Birmingham. You achieved two things by that. Number one, when they started all of that, they just looked at what COVID did to the XFL and they said, we're not going to be that league. We're going to create our own bubble. We're going to park everybody in Birmingham at this beautiful new stadium. And we're going to play our entire season there. And that minimizes our chance if we keep all of our guys clean from exposures and all that. And we can have a much better chance of playing out our entire year and not getting scuttled in game 5. The other thing that it did is it drastically cut the cost of operating the league in year 1 because you got no travel. Everybody's there. You park it in Birmingham for 12 or 10 weeks, and then you go to Canton for 2 and you're out. So, it looked bad on TV. I kind of wish they had done a little bit better job of piping in the crowd noise and all that. But I mean, it is what it is. I felt like they did what they had to do. In year 2, they're going to be playing in their cities. So Pittsburgh's going to be in Pittsburgh. Birmingham's going to be in Birmingham. That's where Tampa Bay is going to be in Tampa Bay. And that's going to be that. So I'm interested to see how that's going to go and how those teams are going to be supported in their cities. Our fans going to be eager to come out now that they know, listen, these guys have had a year. Like, this is year 2 and they made it and they're sticking around. Maybe this is something we can get behind. I certainly hope that's the case. I've made no secret about the fact that I'm a huge proponent of minor league sports. I love the fact that I can load up my family and go to a USFL game right down the road in Birmingham and see the Stallions play. And I can actually afford to do that without taking out a second freaking mortgage. So listen, the NFL's big business. I understand it. They charge what they charge because people will pay it. And that's the way this is supposed to work. As for me and mine, they priced us out years ago. And so I'm happy to get me a Stallions hat and a t-shirt and roll out. I think the other thing that the USFL did a really nice job on, and to their credit, the XFL did too before COVID shut them down. They did a nice job of identifying who their stars are. And I think the hope now is that those guys stick around. So you look at a guy like Bo Scarborough in Birmingham. Well, crap, he played running back for Alabama. People there know him. That's a face they can get behind and root for. Even Auburn fans, as much as they don't want to admit it. You turn around and you look at other places. You look at the kid who played his guts out in the dadgum championship game from Philadelphia. Chris Cookus, isn't that his name? Dude played his guts out, running around like a madman, just slinging it all over the yard. 3 touchdowns in the second half. It was awesome to watch right up until the moment my man got carted off. And that's the reason they lost the game. They win that game going away if he doesn't get hurt. I think having stories like that heading into year 2 are what can really make the USFL, succeed. To Rob's point about whether or not, both leagues can survive one or the other. I don't know that they can. I know America loves football. I don't know that people want to watch football year round. I think there is something to be said for having at least a time of year when you miss things. It's one of my problems with NASCAR is the freaking calendar runs from basically the end of January to November, to halfway through November. There's no time to miss it. All right. You're right on top of a brand new season when you crown your champion. And I don't know that everybody's ready for that. As to which league will rise and which will fall, I don't know. I know the XFL has an allegiance an alliance of some kind with the NFL. I don't know if there's any monetary link there, or if it's just kind of an in-name only type of deal to make them look a little bit more legitimate as a league. I know that the USFL is owned by the Fox Corporation. They have a lot of freaking money and they made a profit off of the USFL in year 1. So as long as that's the case, USFL ain't going nowhere.
XFL has some good contracts too.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to see, and I don't know if this is a pipe dream, but at one time the NFL was 2 different leagues.
Yep.
Yeah. The AFL.
Can you imagine if they both get together with the NFL saying, hey, we'll do this, and Fox saying, okay, this sounds good. And now you have 16, 17, 18 teams playing a full spring league with the financial backing and the television of Fox.
Yeah. No, I think that would be outstanding. I want to see the St. Louis Battlehawks play, and I want them to remain because I think the city of St. Louis freaking deserves to have a professional football team.
I agree.
And I want to see Birmingham beat their eyes in.
And I want to see Birmingham kick their ass. Absolutely.
Yeah. Bring it. I say that without a team, but bring it.
Sorry. Well, I think we can all agree USFL was a surprising success. I enjoyed it. I root for them to succeed. I'm looking forward to year 2. I will own a hat. and good on them. So happy. More football is a good thing for all of us. All right. Next question comes to us from Alex. Is it just me, or could the History Channel find a way of making a cat peeing on a patio a World War II epic? Dude, that's strong right there. Way to bring it. I'm currently watching The Food That Made America and loving every minute. Have you guys seen the show? And if so, what do you think? I do watch Food That Made America. I freaking love that show. It's amazing. I just watched the one the other night that was the basically the chicken wars in the 1970s, when the U.S. government came out with really the country's first dietary guidance. And just basically said, listen, we got to cut down on some of the red meat that we're eating. And at the time, McDonald's owned the world. And so, right about then, Burger King goes out and poaches McDonald's kind of third in command, a guy that was really overlooked by Ray Kroc, brings him in. He completely turns Burger King around just in time to launch them a chicken sandwich that changed everything, and totally seized on that momentum of an American public who was looking to try and eat a little bit healthier. Never mind the fact that that big chicken patty was deep fried and battered, but people felt better about themselves for eating it. I find that stuff fascinating, whether it's the pizza wars. I had no idea, and Rob can speak to this, that Pizza Hut started in Wichita, Kansas. Had no clue. The cola wars, I knew obviously a lot about, but that was a really fascinating watch. So yeah, I'm a History Channel nut anyway, but Food That Made America kicks ass as a great show. Rob, have you had a chance to check this one out?
I did, and I really liked it. The Pizza Wars was the one I was going to bring up, because the Pizza Hut, the original Pizza Hut, has been moved to be on the Wichita State campus. Wichita actually is the founder, the home of Pizza Hut. It's also the home of White Castle, Freddy's Steak Burgers, which is starting to get everywhere now. Wichita's had a long history of food coming out of there. And, the Pizza Hut thing is, we kind of all grew up on it. And I remember when Domino's came into town, and it was kind of like, oh, you think so then, eh?
I didn't watch it, but did they touch on the delivery part where Tom Monahan of Domino's started that whole thing?
Yeah, they did quite a bit.
Did you know? I don't know if they touched on it, but did you guys know this is a little, because I used to own pizza restaurants. Did you know Tom Monahan had the patent on corrugated cardboard boxes because he did that for Keep His Pizzas Warm?
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I didn't know he had the
everything
patent.
Everywhere that uses a corrugated box, not pizza box, but corrugated boxes, his family and his estate is getting a cut of that. Can you imagine?
That's a lot of money.
Yeah. A lot of money. Yeah. They do talk about that. They don't talk about, I don't recall them mentioning that he has a patent on it, but the thing that I think really makes that show strong is that they are talking about not just the fact that it's the competition, like the competition between Domino's and Pizza Hut. And they're not just talking about how the companies grew. The key thing that makes it is that made America part, in the sense that they are talking about the industries that had to develop to make these products work in the first place. Mm-hmm. The corrugated box is a perfect example. He had to figure out a way to make that work, and so he developed an entirely new thing. Heinz had the first fully electric factory, and that's another episode that's in there. And almost every one of these big name companies that we think of in this, they may be Coke, and it may just be Pepsi, or it may just be, Mars or Hershey, whatever. They're all inventing these new technologies to make all of this work. And that, I have to admit, that is even more fascinating than some of the interplay between the companies. Yeah. Because you don't realize how much logistics go into that stuff. So really well done. Yeah, I love the show.
Yep. Great stuff. All right. Final question comes to us from Megan. It seems there's a lot of chatter in geek circles right now about Ezra Miller being replaced as the Flash in the upcoming DC film. And if half the allegations being posed against him are true, rightfully so. Who do you guys think would play a great Barry Allen / the Flash on the silver screen if Ezra Miller is kicked to the curb? I think you have a hard time going wrong with the kid from the CW show. I really like Grant Gustin. I've seen interviews with him. They'll never do it because they're long since on record as saying TV is TV and films are films. I think that's a travesty. I think they've wasted plenty of opportunities, whether it was Tom Welling as Superman or Stephen Amell as Arrow. Now Grant Gustin is the Flash. I think they've had some good people there that really could have sold you a great film. Miller's weird. Like, I watched that guy introduce, I guess, the Flash teaser before a Comic-Con. And like, I get it. We're all, we're all nerds. We have eccentric friends and eccentric tendencies, and that's fine. This guy was just kind of strange. Like he was a creepy little dude running around in like a crop top shirt with horn rim glasses and like a diamond studded choker with a denim vest. I didn't get it. I didn't get the vibe, man. I just thought you looked a little strange interviewing or introducing the teaser. To her point, if there's a lot of really nasty allegations floating around about that guy right now, apparently he's got some real problems. Warner Brothers may have to pull the trigger and replace him in the film, which is crazy because they've already shot it. But anyway, but as far as people who could play a good Barry Allen, I think Grant Gustin could do a great job. If you wanted to step out and get, maybe somebody who's a little bit more known, I think the Ashmore brothers, who you've seen in the X-Men movies and other stuff, they could be a pretty good fit. So that's a couple that come to mind. Kevin, you're a comics guy, particularly back in the day. I know you were more of a Spider-Man guy. Did you ever get into the Flash? And if so, is there anybody out there that you could see play that character?
I did. I think you're right. I think they should pull over. If he's doing well with it on a television show or whatever, why not pull him to the movies? I don't see why not. I don't see the problem with that, but they just don't do that. I don't know why Hollywood is that way. The person Miller, he's got some issues, and I don't, I'm not one to judge or say yay or nay, but I mean,
right,
it's enough where they need to, I think they need to cut ties as far as
Yeah.
They say any PR is good PR, but that's not good PR.
That's not good PR at all. I'm a big fan of innocent until proven guilty. I'm a firm believer in due process. I frankly don't think we get enough of that. We talk a lot about sports and that's rife in that world as well. I don't like convicting people on, court of public opinion and freaking TMZ. So let's see how that plays out. But listen, the allegations against him are pretty raunchy. And if that stuff's on video and the investigators have it, and Warner's has it, yeah, you got some decisions to make, because there's a lot of people who aren't going to support your movie with that guy in it. Right. Rob, how about you, man? Anybody that comes to mind you think could play a good Flash on the silver screen?
I don't really know enough actors, and I don't know the story well enough to really have a good dog in the hunt. I will say again, if you've got somebody that the viewers already recognize in the role, already knows the role, I say go with them. I did want to touch on something you said there, though, at the end about, let's imagine if we had video of Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
If we had the same kind of allegations with video of Deshaun Watson, his career is gone.
Yeah, no doubt.
The scrutiny that athletes get put under compared to the scrutiny that actors get put under is actually a pet peeve of mine. So I probably should get off this soapbox right now. But if it's that sort of thing, then maybe we should be finding him mental help. From what I've seen.
Yep. Totally agree. Well, thanks as everybody. Thanks as always to folks who send in questions. We love hearing from you guys. So whether it's on social media, responding to our stuff, or shoot us an email if you've got a question, dudesandhyperspace@gmail.com. We love hearing from you, man. But it's time to start to put this one.
And wait, before you continue, I actually had an idea. Yeah. I have a name for the mail pod, or the mail segment.
All right.
It's obvious. It should be Dude Mail.
Dude Mail. It was Dude Mail once upon a time. We could discuss bringing that back. We could discuss bringing that back. But all right, that brings us down to White Flag. Here's hoping the sounder plays. White Flag is, of course, a segment where we tell people what's on our radar. It can be book stuff, can be life stuff, whatever. It's coming up in the next days and weeks. So, Kevin, I'll start with you, man. What's happening in the Steverson house? Writer stuff, life stuff, what?
Well, I didn't mention it earlier, and I guess I should. The Imaginarium is happening this upcoming weekend. Okay. And I have a book up for an MGM award.
Me too.
It's in the category of short stories by a single author. So I have my book Orbital Defense Corps, which is 8 of my science fiction short stories.
Cool.
And it's a finalist, so we'll see. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Cool. Keep us posted on social media with what's happening on that, man.
Yeah, I sure will. What else is happening? I'm continuing to watch my Braves. We didn't talk about them, but they were 21-6 in June, that's unusual in Major League Baseball. That's really good. And they're 5-1 in July already. So it's like, I love it. But if you peak too soon and you don't win come the last half of September into October, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, baseball, man. It is a marathon, to be sure. Yep. Rob, how about you, man? What's happening in the House of Howell coming up in the next couple of days and weeks?
Well, I should touch upon the award that he's talking about. I'm also up. Actually, a bunch of us are. The the trailer park anthology that William Joseph Roberts put out. I'm in that, and it's up for best anthology. You're in that? One of you two is in that as well, right?
That'd be Kevin. Yep.
Yeah. So Kevin, you could win twice. That'd be great for us.
I could win a third time by proxy. Because there is a salvage book that's written by Chris Woods and Hillbilly. So,
man, if I thought you were insufferable now, you can do the clean sweep. And oh my gosh, the other thing I'm working on, getting out Eldros Legacy stories. I'm working on a new Eldros Legacy story of my own. Lots of stuff going on there. I'm really excited to get the Forgotten King out. The next book is Amber's Nash. Really excited to get it out. Upcoming for me is Penzic, which is a big trip for me, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be in Pennsylvania for a little over 2 weeks, selling books, talking about books, and writing and editing. It's actually a really productive time for me. Cool. And then at the end, I get to go out and hang out with my buddies and do the cheers thing. Rotary, and the other thing I'm working on is making sure I don't get divorced within the first month. I think that's something I should probably try to do.
Yeah, work on that. That's a priority. Got to have those. That's a priority. So Malone House, what are we doing? Edits continue on Last Argonaut. So as mentioned before, looking to have that done by end of summer so that I can get off the edit for you guys to check out. I'm really excited about that. Every day I work on edits for that, and it just makes me smile a little bit more. What that book is and what it became. It was really kind of a passion project, a labor of love, and I'm excited to bring that one to you guys. So that one's on the way. Got a road trip happening next weekend for a concert in Pensacola that I'm pretty excited about. The White Tie Orchestra, I think they're called. I don't know anything about these guys. My wife found them online. We're going for a buddy of mine's birthday. Apparently they are like a tribute band on steroids. So think Trans-Siberian Orchestra, but as a tribute band. And they tour and they pick themes that they will, tour on. And this one is 80s arena rock. So it's going to be Boston. It's going to be Van Halen. It's going to be some hair metal in there. And like, that's what we're going to have going on at the Bay Center next weekend. So excited to be a part of that. And then lastly, the return of Better Call Saul, the last batch of episodes for that. Speaking of shows and great stories, really interested to see how the writers put a bow on that one and put it to bed, because it's been a crazy ride. So, all righty, I think that's going to do it for this, our first real video episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. Thanks to Rob Howe, Kevin Steverson for tagging along. Thanks to you, the listeners, and now the viewers, for sending along messages. We greatly appreciate that. Thanks to our sponsors, Chris Kennedy Publishing, the International Association of Science Fiction and Fantasy Authors. Those guys are awesome. If you want to know more about us, you know how to do it. Find us on social media, man. Like it, smash it, subscribe to the channel, like the shows. Those are the ways you support us. If you can leave 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, whatever, please do that. It helps to bump us up through the rankings. Again, if you've got a question for us, find us on social media. Shoot us an email, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Finally, as you can see, we're kind of in the process of doing a little bit of a reboot, if you will, on the show, doing some different things. Sometimes you got to freshen some things up. So whether it's what we talk about, the length of the show, if you got any opinions, any thoughts, any feedback you want to give to us, we do market research all day long, but you're our listeners. So let's hear from you, man. Shoot us an email, shoot us a direct message on social media, and we want your thoughts on how we can make this show better. So again, on behalf of Rob Howe, Kevin Steverson, we greatly appreciate you tagging along. We hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I'm Ian J. Malone. See ya.